Salam, Namaste, Sat Sri Akal. I'm your host, Ajay Vasisht, with the Weekender on Sunday. Welcome to the show, coming into what we hope is the tail end of the second lockdown at alert level 2.5. 10 more days to go. Hang in there, Auckland walo. Corona ko defeat kar diya aap logon ne shayad. Well, kafi had tak. And to the rest of New Zealand, we'll say kia kaha, yani ki stand strong, and get through this alert level 2. Center stage in New Zealand and elsewhere this last week have been the news that New Zealand is considered the second safest COVID country in the world. Can you guess which is the safest COVID country in the world? More on that coming up later in the show, so keep tuned in. The rest of New Zealand stays on alert level 2 outside of Auckland. Coronavirus is continuing its spread across the world with more than 26.4 million coronavirus cases confirmed globally, with more than 870,000 deaths and 17.5 million recoveries. That's got to be good news, the recovery part. In news from Fiji, the University of the South Pacific, USP, has a new vice chancellor and president, Pal Ahluwalia, an NRI from Kenya. The twist was he was fired and then reinstated. We cast an eye on that twisted tale with a happy and rather interesting ending. Visitors and temporary migrants stuck in New Zealand due to COVID-19 will have their visas extended to give them more time to organize flights home. We get into the details for you. In cricket news, Harbhajan Singh is to pull out of IPL 2020. Is this another COVID-19 related fallout or is it something else? उनके एक दोस्त ने हरभजन सिंह के IPL से हटने के बारे में कहा कि असली वजह क्या है 2 करोड़ या 20 करोड़ लेकर भी नहीं खेलेंगे. We follow Harbhajan's tweet and the trail to why he's pulling out. In rugby's big news, last night it was the battle of the islands, North versus South. There could only be one winner, and it was Te Waiponamu, the South's team who snatched victory in the dying minutes of the game. In a head-to-head series, today our guest is Dr. Parmjeet Parmar, list member for National Party. She was first elected to Parliament in September 2014, and she's been the member of the 51st and 52nd Parliaments. Kushmita Parmjeet Kaur Parmar grew up in India, where her father served in the Indian Air Force. She completed a master's in biochemistry in India and in 1995 moved to New Zealand to join her husband. In Auckland, she gained a PhD in neuroscience and worked as a scientist. She worked as a current affairs and talkback host in radio broadcasting and accompanied former Prime Ministers Helen Clark as well as John Key on their official visits to India. The National Party appointed her the board of then Families Commission in 2013. She entered Parliament as a Nationalist MP in 2014. Now, in terms of the election background, this is very interesting. This is something we're going to come to as soon as we bring her on board. Parmar contested in the 2016 Mount Roskill by-election on 3 December 2016, but she was unsuccessful, with the Labour's Michael Wood winning by a comfortable margin. She was successful in campaigning for the party vote in 2014 election, and with the National Party winning the party vote in the electorate for the first time since the seat's formation, she then went on to win National's party vote for the seat again in the 2017 election. She is also the chairperson of the Education and Workforce Select Committee, spokesperson for research, science and innovation, and for statistics. So after that slightly short introduction, welcome to the show, Dr. Parmar. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you so much, Ajay, for that introduction. Thank you for your welcome and also for giving me the opportunity to be on your show. Hello to you and hello to all the viewers.
And in the interest of keeping with our listener and audience base, hello de alawa tonu sat sri akal bhi keh dende ji. Te namaste
Sat
bhi.
Sri Akal, namaste. Yes, greetings.
So I know that there's not much going on the festival calendar at the moment, and we're not going to be getting to Diwali for a while. The big Diwali in your life and our lives, apart from dealing with COVID, is going to be the election 2020. How are you finding it out there? How difficult is it looking with the campaigning? With just 5 weeks away, have you had to adjust your approach?
Yes, definitely. The approach has been adjusted hugely because before what happened, as we experienced the second outbreak, we suspended our campaigning. So National Party suspended campaigning all around. But now we have started campaigning again. Since we have come down to level 2.5 here in Auckland, and obviously rest of the country stays at level 2. But our campaigning is very different this time. So we have to be really careful because social distancing is really important. So
Yes.
what I'm focusing on is connecting with people by phone calling and also by doing flyer deliveries, letters that are being sent to different mailboxes in Mount Roskill. So this campaign is definitely a very different campaign. So that's why I am focusing on getting in touch with people to ensure that people understand that the election is happening.
Yes.
And as we head into that next month of election, people understand the importance of their vote, because this time it's voting for parties and candidates, and also two referendums, that is on euthanasia and cannabis. So
Yes.
it's really important that people understand that. But one feedback that I'm getting is people actually feeling quite anxious to come
Yes.
out and do various outdoor activities.
Yes.
So my concern this time is the turnout. I really hope that people will come out and vote, because their vote is really important in deciding who will be the next or who will form the next government. Last time, as you know, we won. National won the election, but we couldn't form a government because we missed by around 2%, 2 to 3%. And
Yes.
this time, really hoping that people will come out and have their voice heard, because this is their opportunity. After 3 years, they get this opportunity, and I'm hoping they'll take up this opportunity.
I really hope they will take this opportunity. पर आपसे जरा थोड़ी मैं हिंदी में वार्तालाप करने में भी मजा आएगा, अगर आपको उस पर कोई आपत्ति ना हो तो।
मुझे कोई आपत्ति नहीं।
हाँ, तो अगर आप अब इतने शॉर्ट स्पेस ऑफ टाइम रह गया, 5 ही हफ्ते रह गए, आप लोग अब डोर टू डोर नहीं जा पाएंगे ना, और 10 लोगों से ज्यादा के ग्रुपिंग में आप खड़े भी नहीं हो सकते अपनी कैंपेनिंग करने के लिए। सो आपको लगता है कि दिस इज गोइंग टू डिमिनिश योर चांसेस?
No, I don't think so. अजय, मुझे लगता है कि लोग पूरी तरह से अवेयर हैं. As I'm talking to them on phone, people understand कि क्या कुछ हो रहा है कंट्री में, and I think government has really dropped the ball, क्योंकि ये जो second outbreak हुआ है, इससे बहुत सारी frustration लोगों में आई है. People are feeling really frustrated, especially in Mount Roskill, because people are saying it's happening now in their backyard. I mean, overall we know कि COVID is in New Zealand, and first time after level 4 lockdown, people thought that okay, fine, we sacrificed, we are out of it, and we can be safe. But again, with this outbreak, especially now, we don't know the source of this outbreak. इस outbreak का source पता नहीं है, वो एक बहुत बड़ा concern है. और सबसे बड़ा concern level 4 में जाने का ये था कि that time we went into level 4 lockdown, but we didn't close our border before getting into level 4. So National Party had to do a petition to convince this government to close our borders. So अभी borders close हो गए हैं, लेकिन borders के ऊपर आपने देखा होगा कि एक और प्रॉब्लम ये है कि जब हमारे जो लोग ओवरसीज से आ रहे हैं, रेजिडेंट्स एंड सिटीजन दैट आर एबल टू कम इनटू न्यू जीलैंड, उनका डे 3 का जो टेस्टिंग है, we know that's not happening for all of those people. और दूसरा इश्यू था कि जो कि फ्रंट लाइन जितने भी लोग हैं, एसेंशियल वर्कर्स हैं, उनकी टेस्टिंग भी सबकी रेगुलर बेसिस पे नहीं हो रही थी, जो कि नेशनल नहीं एक्सपोज किया है. तो ये बहुत बड़े रिस्क हैं हमारे कंट्री के लिए कि ये जो टेस्टिंग है उसी से पता चल सकता है कि कौन पॉजिटिव है, कौन नेगेटिव है. ये मैं मानती हूँ कि कुछ फॉल्स नेगेटिव्स भी आ सकते हैं, इसीलिए 2 टेस्ट जब मैनेज आइसोलेशन में लोग हैं, ये होने बहुत जरूरी है. तो डेफिनेटली जो गवर्नमेंट है उसने एक तरह से वो जो सेक्रीफाइस था लोगों का लेवल 4 के लॉकडाउन में, उसको एक तरह से डिमिनिश कर दिया है, ये जो आउटब्रेक हुआ है. और अभी इस आउटब्रेक में क्योंकि सोर्स भी नहीं पता है, सोर्स पता होना बहुत जरूरी है, क्योंकि अगर सोर्स पता होगा तभी हम ये आइडेंटिफाई कर सकेंगे कि कहाँ पर और जो सिस्टम है उसको टाइटन करने की जरूरत है कि और ऐसे.
तो आपने ये वैसे 2 मुद्दे बहुत सही पकड़े हुए परमजीत जी, कि बॉर्डर पे टेस्टिंग होनी चाहिए, तीसरे दिन को टेस्टिंग नहीं हो रही है, और उसके अलावा अगर आप अंदर आना चाहते हैं और आप वहां पर काम कर रहे हैं, यू वन ऑफ द सपोर्ट स्टाफ, तो उनकी भी टेस्टिंग नहीं हो रही थी. आपके हिसाब से क्या फर्क किया जा सकता है? ये 3-4 मुद्दे तो सामने ऑलरेडी आ चुके हैं. व्हाट कुड बी द इम्प्रूवमेंट? क्या कर सकते हैं एज नेशनल पार्टी? आप उनके प्रवक्ता भी हैं, आप उनके मेंबर भी हैं, तो क्या फर्क किया जा सकता है जिससे और भी कम हो जाए कोविड का जो प्रकोप है हमारी कंट्री में?
डेफिनेटली टेस्टिंग जो है, जो डे 3 की टेस्टिंग है, हम लोग काफी पुश कर रहे हैं कि
नहीं, उन चीजों के अलावा ये तो सब सारी चीजें अब सामने आ गई, क्योंकि आपने उनको पकड़ लिया, गवर्नमेंट ने भी मान लिया, लेकिन हाउ कैन वी इम्प्रूव दिस प्रोसेस फर्दर?
सो प्रोसेस को फर्दर इम्प्रूव करने के लिए हम चाहते हैं कि जो जीनोमिक्स टेस्टिंग है जो लोगों की, क्योंकि अभी जीनोमिक्स टेस्टिंग जो लोग कोविड 19 पॉजिटिव पाए जा रहे हैं, उन सब की नहीं हो रही है, वो हम
हम्म,
पुश करना चाहते हैं कि जिन पर टेस्टिंग ज़रूर हो।
जी
और
हाँ।
जहाँ तक मास्क जो लोग पहन रहे हैं, अभी मैं किसी से बात कर रही थी, वो सुपरमार्केट में जाकर के आए, वहाँ पर सिर्फ 1/3 लोगों ने मास्क पहने हुए थे और सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग भी उतना फॉलो नहीं कर रहे थे। तो
जी
जो
हाँ।
मास्क है, उसकी जो नॉलेज है कि क्यों मास्क पहनना है, ये हमें और अवेयरनेस लोगों में लाने की ज़रूरत है। और इसके साथ-साथ हम एक क्राउन एजेंसी जो है, वो हमने ऑलरेडी अनाउंस किया है कि वो हम
हम्म,
सेटअप करेंगे, जो कि ओवरसी करेगा ये जो पूरा प्रोसेस है कि किस
हम्म।
तरह से हम अपने बॉर्डर को सेफ रखें और कंट्री को सेफ करें। और जैसे मैंने
आपको नहीं
कहा कि
लगता ज्यादा
सोर्स जो
ब्यूरोक्रेसी
है
हो जाएगी केवल कोविड के लिए एक
आउटब्रेक
नया
का
डिपार्टमेंट खोलने में?
नहीं, एक्चुअली बहुत ज़रूरी है कि कंट्रोल जो है एक जगह पर हो, ताकि कि इन्फॉर्मेशन जो है वो अलग-अलग ना हो। जैसा
हम्म,
कि अभी आपने देखा होगा कि जो प्राइम मिनिस्टर हैं, वो तो हर समय किसी न किसी को करने की कोशिश करती हैं, क्योंकि
हम्म,
उन्होंने कहा कि जो फ्रंट लाइन स्टाफ जो है वो खुद ही टेस्ट नहीं कराते थे। तो वो
हम्म,
बाद में सामने आया कि फ्रंट लाइन स्टाफ एक्चुअली रिक्वेस्ट कर रहे थे कि हमारा टेस्ट करो, और उनका टेस्ट नहीं हो रहा था। तो एक
हम्म।
इंडिपेंडेंट एजेंसी वहाँ पर जब रहेगी, तो उसमें से पॉलिटिक्स बाहर आ जाएगी। अभी कोविड-19 की मैनेजमेंट में जो जितनी भी पॉलिटिक्स है, उसको बाहर निकालना बहुत ज़रूरी है, क्योंकि इसको एज़ अ हेल्थ कंसर्न लेकर के ही चलना ज़रूरी है, ना कि पॉलिटिकल इश्यू बना करके चलना ज़रूरी है।
तो आपको लगता है कि अब ये जो कोविड का कम समय बच गया इलेक्शन तक आने के लिए और अर्ली वोटिंग भी शुरू हो जाएगी, उसमें आपकी पोजीशन स्ट्रेंथन हुई है जूडिथ कॉलिंस के आने के बाद, या इन ये जो थोड़े से कमियां रह गई हैं, त्रुटियां रह गई हैं गवर्नमेंट की बॉर्डर वगैरह पे, उसके कारण आपकी पोजीशन कुछ स्ट्रांग हो रही है?
तो जूडिथ कॉलिंस हमारी लीडर जो है, वो काफ़ी एक्सपीरियंस्ड हैं, उनको
हम्म,
18 साल 18 इयर्स हो गए हैं पॉलिटिक्स में। उसके साथ-साथ उनको ये पता है कि हमें क्या चाहिए। ये बहुत
हम्म,
ज़रूरी है कि पता हो लीडर को कि हमें कंट्री को किस तरह से सही डायरेक्शन में लेकर के जाना है। उसके
हम्म,
साथ-साथ हम अपनी जो पॉलिसीज़ हैं, ये भी हम अनाउंस करते जा रहे हैं।
हम्म,
लेकिन जहाँ तक आपने देखा होगा कि लेबर ने कहा है कि ये इलेक्शन जो है कोविड-19 पर ही रहेगा, और वो कोई भी पॉलिसीज़ अनाउंस नहीं कर रहे हैं। लेकिन दूसरी
प्रीटी
तरफ
मच
वो जो
यस।
पैसा पीएफ का पैसा है, वो बिना किसी मकसद के, जैसे अभी ग्रीन स्कूल जो है मीडिया में रहा है, ऐसी जगहों पर खर्च हैं जहाँ पर कि वो सिर्फ अपने कोलिशन पार्टनर्स को ही खुश रखना चाहते हैं। तो ये एक बहुत बड़ी डिसअपॉइंटमेंट है। हम चाहते हैं कि इलेक्शन में जब लोग वोटिंग करने जाएँ, उनके सामने पूरी पॉलिसीज़ क्लियर हों, और स्पेशली अभी जो डेट है $140 बिलियन जो बोरोइंग हुई है, नेशनल ने क्लियरली कहा है कि बोरोइंग ज़रूरी है, लेकिन बोरोइंग कितनी हो और वो किस तरह से स्पेंड हो, ये बहुत ज़रूरी है। और अभी तक लेबर ने ये क्लियर नहीं किया है कि किस तरह के टैक्सेस वो लेकर के आएँगे रेवेन्यू को इंक्रीज़ करने के लिए। क्योंकि रेवेन्यू को तो बनाना ही पड़ेगा किसी भी तरह से, वो जो डेट जो है बोरो किया है, उसको वापस करने के लिए। तो वो लोगों ने वो क्लैरिफाई नहीं किया है, और हम लोग डिमांड कर रहे हैं वो बताया जाए। लास्ट टाइम कैपिटल गेन्स टैक्स पर उन्होंने कैंपेन किया था, लेकिन बाद में सर माइकल कलन को $1000 पर डे पे करके ये नतीजा निकला कि वो नहीं करना चाहते हैं, लेकिन वो पूरी तरह से गिव अप नहीं किया था। हमें पूरी तरह से पता होना चाहिए कि क्या टैक्सेस हैं। दूसरी तरफ नेशनल ने ये कह दिया है कि ऑकलैंड जो रीजनल फ्यूल टैक्स है, क्योंकि लाइट रेल जो है, लाइट रेल अभी कैंसल हो चुकी है, और लाइट रेल के लिए हमें कन्विंस किया गया था कि जो ऑकलैंड रीजनल फ्यूल टैक्स है, ये ज़रूरी होगा। लाइट रेल कैंसल हो गई, लेकिन ऑकलैंड रीजनल फ्यूल टैक्स कैंसल नहीं हुआ। जुलाई के फर्स्ट ऑफ जुलाई से फिर से सबने 4 सेंट्स प्लस जीएसटी एक्स्ट्रा टैक्स जो है वो फ्यूल में सब भर रहे हैं। कॉस्ट ऑफ लिविंग ऑलरेडी इतनी ज़्यादा हो चुकी है। तो ये पॉलिसी सबके लिए जाननी बहुत ज़रूरी है कि पार्टीज़ किस चीज़ के लिए स्टैंड करती हैं, और नेशनल का रिकॉर्ड है कि जहाँ तक इकोनॉमी को मैनेज करना है, नेशनल को पता है किस तरह से मैनेज करनी है।
तो पर इतना जो डेट आ रहा है, आपको नहीं लगता ऑन अ पर्सनल लेवल, मे बी एज अ पॉलिटिशियन एज वेल, दैट द मनी इज बेसिकली कमिंग फ्रॉम वन लेंडिंग इंस्टीट्यूशन गोइंग इनटू द हैंड्स ऑफ रेंटर्स, people who are having mortgages, and then it is going back to other lenders. So don't you feel that there could have been a better way to do it than with the wage subsidy perhaps?
वेज सब्सिडी मैकेनिज्म जो है, उसको हमने अजय सपोर्ट किया है, क्योंकि
Mm-hmm.
सपोर्ट चाहिए था। लेकिन हम
But
हमारा
could it
ये
have been
कहना
done
है
differently
नेशनल।
in a better way? I mean, it's all hindsight
यस,
now because
यस,
it's been
यस,
done. But do you
एग्जैक्टली,
think what would
एग्जैक्टली,
National have done
एग्जैक्टली।
differently?
तो वेज सब्सिडी जो है वो बिजनेसेस को दी है, लेकिन उससे जो सपोर्ट है वो सिर्फ उनकी एम्प्लॉयज की वेज के लिए है। लेकिन हम लोग बिजनेसेस को सपोर्ट जो है वो नहीं मिली है, उसके लिए डेफिनेटली वी वर कैंपेनिंग कि जो बिजनेसेस हैं उनको सपोर्ट मिलनी जरूरी है, क्योंकि लीज है उनकी या कोई और उनके जो बिल्स हैं वो तो आते ही रहेंगे। इसीलिए हम
Yeah.
लोगों ने जॉब स्टार्ट और एक बिजनेस स्टार्ट जो है, ये दो मेन पॉलिसीज हैं। और उसके साथ साथ हमने $150,000 के जो न्यू एसेट्स हैं उनको पूरी तरह से राइट ऑफ करने की पॉलिसी जो है अनाउंस की है। जॉब स्टार्ट जो है उसमें क्या है कि बिजनेसेस जो हैं वो किसी नए एम्प्लॉय को रखने के लिए वो पैसा एक्सेस कर सकते हैं, $10,000 फॉर 6 मंथ्स। क्योंकि
राइट।
अभी क्या है, बिजनेस अगर चाहते भी हैं ग्रो होना तो वो अफोर्ड नहीं कर सकते और स्टाफ को रखना, और अगर स्टाफ नहीं रखते तो वो ग्रो नहीं कर सकते। और बिजनेस स्टार्ट जो पॉलिसी है, अभी आप जानते हैं कि 250 लोग जो हैं पर डे अनएम्प्लॉयड हो रहे थे अभी लेवल 3 में, और उसके पहले 215,000 लोग जब पहला लॉकडाउन लेवल 4 हुआ था तो अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट बेनिफिट पर गए थे। तो ये लोग जो है वो काम करना चाहते हैं, उनके लिए नौकरियां क्रिएट करना जरूरी है, इसलिए बिजनेसेस को सपोर्ट जरूरी है। तो हमने ये भी कहा है कि अगर ये लोग जो अभी अनएम्प्लॉयड हुए हैं वो कोई बिजनेस आइडिया लेकर के आते हैं तो वो अपना बिजनेस शुरू करें। इसके लिए हमने बिजनेस स्टार्ट एक स्कीम शुरू की है,
जी
जिसमें
हाँ।
कि वो अपने टीवी सेवर जो फंड्स हैं उसको भी एक्सेस कर पाएंगे। तो ऑप्शंस जो है हम पूरी तरह से चॉइसेस जो है वो ओपन रखना चाहते हैं। और तीसरा है कि अगर
बिजनेस
कोई
कम्युनिटी से आपको इस
करता
पे
है
ऑब्वियसली काफी सपोर्ट मिली होगी इन पॉलिसी
जी,
से, आपको लगता है फीडबैक क्या आया है बिजनेस कम्युनिटी से?
फीडबैक जॉब स्टार्ट के लिए डेफिनेटली बहुत ही पॉजिटिव फीडबैक है। लेकिन
हम्म।
मैं ये बताना चाहूंगी कि इसके साथ साथ जो $150,000 है न्यू एसेट, अगर आप अपना बिजनेस ग्रो कर रहे हैं, कोई नई मशीनरी खरीदते हैं, तो वो स्ट्रेट अवे आप राइट ऑफ कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि उससे आप ज्यादा इन्वेस्ट अपने कर सकते हैं। लेकिन सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट बात ये है कि ये जो पॉलिसीज हैं ये हम इम्प्लीमेंट कर पाएंगे अगर हम अगली गवर्नमेंट जो है फॉर्म करते हैं। और इसीलिए मैं आपके व्यूअर्स से कहूंगी कि केयरफुली कंसिडर करें इस अगले आने वाले इलेक्शन में। माउंट रस्कल में है तो मुझे भी एक टिक, और नेशनल पार्टी को भी टिक, और कंट्री में कहीं पर भी हैं तो नेशनल पार्टी को जरूर टिक, और अगर नेशनल कैंडिडेट को भी टिक देंगे तो बहुत अच्छा होगा।
तो मेरे शो के एंड में जो मैं आपसे 30 सेकंड में एलिवेटर पिच लेने वाला था प्रमोशन के लिए, वो आपने ले लिए।
चलिए, कोई बात नहीं।
नहीं नहीं, इलेक्शन का समय है तो पिच तो होती रहेगी। सो यू फील योर नेशनल इज अ मोर बिजनेस फोकस्ड पार्टी. Are these going to be all grants, or are you going to give the money to them and then expect something back? Um, and what happens once they have written off this money? What happens once they run out of $10,000? Because it won't run very far. What happens then? If the coronavirus is continuing for the next 2, 3, 4 years, who knows?
So, Ajay, a national party is not only focused on businesses, we are also focused on families. We are also focused on our young people, children. We are also focused on making sure that people are able to
No, no,
get
but
into their first.
I get that. But my question is to when you're giving all the support to the businesses, what happens to them post running out of that initial handout?
So what happens, Ajay, is that sometimes businesses need that support in the start. So once
Mm-hmm.
their business is making money, so $10,000 is for 6 months. That is what we have said. So we have also said that 90-day probation period we will bring back for all businesses. So that gives that another flexibility to businesses, because what businesses need is less red tape. They need more flexibility. They need some support so that they can employ more people. What
Yes.
happens is, Ajay, 94% or 95% of our businesses are really, really small businesses. You know, these
Yes.
people, they take more on their home or any other asset they have to start up their business. It's not like the money is just sitting there and they go out and buy this business and they can start investing in
Sure.
that business.
Sure.
They need some kind of assurance that there is support available for them to take that risk. It's a huge personal risk that these people, those who start up businesses, I mean, my family runs a business and I understand how it works.
How tough it is.
It's not easy. It's not easy. So we have to support, we have to create that business enabling environment for businesses to be able to take that risk so that they can invest
So
in
you
their
think they'll
business,
employ more
employ more
people
people,
if you're able to give 10,000 per employee for a period of 6 months?
employ.
You are subsidizing to that degree.
Yes, and so what we are hoping is that with that they will get more support, that additional support that they need with that additional employee to grow their business, and then they will be able to pick up from there. So any support at this stage, you know, businesses are really eager to get any kind of support that they can, and that is what we want to do.
You'll have to watch out though, because I think a lot of businesses will probably just give the money the government of the day, within inverted commas, gives to them for the employees and say इसी में काम कर लो, 2,000 मिल रहा है महीने का या 1,500 मिल रहा है, इसी में काम कर लो, बाकी 6 महीने बाद देखेंगे.
So what happens is the money is not given as a lump sum in the start.
Sure.
So it's staged how the money is given, and already Ministry of Social Development runs a flexi wage subsidy scheme, which
Sure.
works really well. So this is kind of a flexi wage, but not exactly flexi wage. So this
Okay.
is yeah. So we actually national started that policy, flexi wage subsidy policy, and
Right.
Ministry of Social Development implements that policy, and the feedback from businesses for that policy has been really positive. So this is kind of a
Great.
modification of that flexi wage subsidy scheme.
So something to look forward to, and it may well be that Labour will try and also give an answer to this particular policy at some point. So there'll be a bit of locking of horns, which is good for the electorate. Now,
And
just
also,
looking. Sorry,
before
go ahead.
before we jump on to a new topic, talking
Yes.
about wage subsidy and supporting employees and supporting businesses, as a
Mm-hmm.
spokesperson for research, science, and innovation,
Yes.
I noticed when we went into lockdown level 4 that some research and development companies in the startup phase, they couldn't qualify for wage subsidy at that point because these
Right.
companies, they
They
don't
had just
have any
started
revenue.
up. Yes.
They couldn't show any drop in their revenue 30% or 50%. So I
Yes.
had to advocate for that. So in the month of March earlier this year, I wrote to the minister in charge and I asked her to look into it and extend wage subsidy for research and development companies. And for 2 months, I didn't get a response. And then
Right.
in a select committee, she appeared before the select committee. I asked her a question about this, that why my letter was not responded. She apologized. And then after 2 days, I received a response. So it's a actually it was actually a really good effort to ensure that R&D companies that are in startup phase are also now
So
qualifying.
they now qualify. You have got that
Yes,
done.
but it got that done. It was a fight, but finally we managed to get that done.
A bit of a wait and fight scenario. Looking like they must have been very busy with lots of other things, not taking their side or anything. I'm just saying it was a crazy time over that period in March, April, in the first lockdown. So thank you very much for sharing that. Kind of keeping in that same area, looking at your position as chairperson of the Education and Workforce Select Committee, um, what is that role? And you feel being a chairperson of such a committee can help you make a difference?
Definitely, Ajay. So, we have parliamentary select committees that are based on different portfolios. There are 12 select committees, plus there are other select committees that deal with parliamentary business. So, I chaired this select committee. So, Parliament is going to dissolve from today. So, select committees exist until Parliament exists. So my select committee was made up of more government members and less opposition members. So government members had majority. So it was a very interesting committee that I chaired because government members have had numbers on that committee. So in that we deal with various legislations that are to do anything with education,
Yes.
anything to do with ACC, anything to do with immigration, anything to do with health and safeties, because workforce is a very wide term. So all those legislations came through my select committee, and
All right.
along with that, I had to deal with several petitions too. So it's a very good leadership role, and I have to say that it's a real privilege and honor to be the chairperson of a select committee while being in opposition.
So are you saying you actually enjoyed whipping the opposition into shape while you were the chairperson?
So it's not. So what I'm saying is that it was a privilege, while being an opposition member, to get
Yes.
this role to chair a select committee.
I was joking, so you know that, anyways. I'm guessing you enjoyed it though.
Oh, obviously, yeah.
So, given that you have this science background and quite an academic background as well, what facets from your past experience are serving you best now, going forward, in the roles you are in right now, and maybe what you think could be coming your way? What is serving you the best out of all of your experiences?
So Ajay, I come from a very, very multidisciplinary background. So yes, I'm a
Yes.
scientist. So as a scientist, this has been really great to have the opportunity to advocate for our scientific community. In the last time I worked with our science ministers, we were in government closely. I worked with them to ensure that scientific community's voice was taken into consideration when making any decisions. And in this term, being the spokesperson, I had this opportunity to take the lead in that space, connect with several scientists and come up with some policies. As I don't know if you have noticed, I've been advocating for some legislations to be changed to allow more biotech sector to flourish here in New Zealand. So that is
Mm-hmm.
a big task. And nobody
Mm-hmm.
actually wanted to talk about it because Greens are totally opposing it, Labour Party is opposing it. So I've managed to convince my
Mm-hmm.
National Party colleagues to uh, modify that legislation to allow more biotech happen here in New Zealand. But other
Mm-hmm.
than that, it's about like an example I gave you before about fighting to extend the wage subsidy to R&D companies. And
Mm-hmm.
just today, you will see in paper, I'm fighting for Massey University scientists. There is a coverage in New Zealand Herald about,
Mm-hmm.
their new media policy. So, yep, so I am there with our scientific community. I understand their issues. I've done my PhD here from University of
Mm-hmm.
Auckland, worked
Mm-hmm.
there and been through that system. So I fully understand how our system works. But other than
Right.
that, as I said, my family is in business, so I fully understand how difficult it is to own and run your own business. So
Mm-hmm.
there needs to be more time to support our businesses. I was
Mm-hmm.
also a families commissioner, so I do understand the importance of evidence when we are making our policies, even in social sector.
Right.
So there are a lot of different, when you go in, I mean, as a member of parliament, my role is to ensure that I'm able to contribute in more than one area and bring that
Right.
understanding to the team when we are making decisions in these
So,
various areas.
just keeping to that scientific background of yours, do you think, or what do you rate New Zealand's chances of coming up with a COVID-19 vaccine in the short term or medium term?
So, Ajay, it's good you asked me because I was advocating for some funding to be allocated for our scientists
Mm-hmm.
to have the ability to develop a vaccine. And I was actually quite disappointed. For weeks and weeks, our scientists were lobbying this current Labour government, and there was no funding being
In fact, I think
allocated.
there's been some kind of an announcement today. I'm not addressing it to any particular
So
party.
later on,
I think
yeah,
Fonterra
about
has
after.
lent some of its best machinery for the COVID-19 research.
So after about 2 months, government
Yes.
came up with an announcement. They allocated some funding, but which is not going to be enough to develop a vaccine here. And
Right.
then European Commission called on New Zealand, as they called on other countries, to become
Mm-hmm.
part of a global effort to develop a vaccine. Our
Mm-hmm.
neighboring country, Australia, contributed, this is in New Zealand dollars, around $360 million. And New
Mm-hmm.
Zealand didn't contribute anything to that global effort. But now, after this outbreak, community outbreak, government has said they will be
Mm-hmm.
working on a strategy, international strategy, to ensure that we get vaccine once it is developed. So
Mm-hmm.
developing a vaccine is not an easy task, and New Zealand has been one of the later countries to get that funding to start that work. We know that some vaccine development work overseas was already going into animal trials before we here scientists managed to get that funding to start their work. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not only developing the vaccine, but also ensuring that we have the ability to produce a vaccine once a vaccine is developed, because
Mm-hmm.
we will be competing with around 215 countries all around the world that will be
Yes.
wanting to have access to this vaccine. And we are
Yes.
a small country. We have to be part of this to ensure that vaccine becomes available to our people as soon
Yeah.
as it is
Otherwise, we'll
developed.
be at the end of the queue, or we simply won't get there. Yes.
Exactly. So that's why it's important that, and this is also our
But then again, I
opportunity
think
to
making it
show.
locally might take care of that problem, isn't it? So, do you think that's what I'm saying? Is there any chances we can actually get one developed within New Zealand's borders?
So, Ajay, as a scientist, I'll say there's always a chance, but it's
Right.
not an easy, because we know that this virus is mutating, and
Mm-hmm.
depending on the where the vaccine is being targeted in that virus structure, that
Yes.
will actually decide the chances of that vaccine reaching to that final stage where it's actually ready. It
Yeah.
has to be something that is ready, that is trial tested, and is effective. So there are a few, stages it has to go through. It's not a
Yes.
straightforward process, and
Not
vaccine
like the
development
Russian one,
usually
which went
takes
through in like
numbers
two
of
months.
years.
Not like the Russian one that went through in 2 months or 3 months.
So I'm very hopeful,
Yeah.
and this is our opportunity to also showcase our scientific community, give them the opportunity, here
Absolutely.
in.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. And I think if we do bat over our normal strength. So if we succeed in this area of endeavor, it'll be another amazing achievement for New Zealand. So we are all keeping our fingers crossed in that one as well. Just moving on a
We
little
are.
bit. Just keep moving on a little bit. Um, You mentioned it before in the show today that there is a heavy representation of people from India in your electorate of Mount Roskill. In fact, around these parts, we often call it Mount India. Um, and in the temporary migrant numbers, also there's plenty of temporary migrants from our community who live in your electorate. So they've just been given a notice of 2 months in some cases and a lifeline for maybe 5 months in others to get their affairs into order by the immigration minister. What is your perspective on this for your people within your electorate? Even though temporary migrants really have no say in terms of the election, and they have no say in terms of being people who you can represent as such because they don't have status. But what is your perspective on this on a human level?
So, Ajay, as you've said, on human level, so my policy is that in my office, whoever
Mm-hmm.
walks in, I try my best to help them. So
Mm-hmm.
even if they are not a resident or citizen of New Zealand, so
Mm-hmm.
it's not about, if they are not residents or citizens, I know they can't vote here. So, but still, I do my best to help them. Just last week, I managed to get 12 months work visa for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
This was through the minister. So if I'm convinced that it's a genuine case, and if
Mm-hmm.
I'm convinced that something needs to be done for that individual, then I'll definitely take it up. So when we talk about our migrant communities, Ajay, there are so many different layers to that. The first layer
Mm-hmm.
is of people, those who are residents and citizens here. So
Mm-hmm.
for them, jobs are important. So at
Sure.
the moment, our focus should be to create jobs, ensure that the cost of living is somehow lowered. Then there is
Yes.
the second layer of people, those who are residents and citizens here, but have their partners, this is wife or husband, stuck overseas in India. And
Mm-hmm.
I have advocated for them in Parliament. I have
Mm-hmm.
asked a question to the Minister for Immigration, because I really feel for them, because obviously they'll have to go through the proper, immigration process, and if they qualify, they should be able to
So
join
how
their
many
husband.
lovelorn husbands and wives can come to your office and ask for help?
so, so
No, I
Ajay,
mean it. I
my
mean it. Even in our
my
office, there is a couple of cases. So
yes, so
I'm not
so
saying
that is
coronavirus
already
cases.
on
I'm
my
saying immigration separation cases.
yeah. So I'm already working on that. I've been advocating within our national team as well.
Yes.
But we have to, as I said, that what we would like to, what this is personally me saying, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
advocating within our national team as well. And I've asked government as well questions on this, that
Mm-hmm.
because this is really unfair for these people to be stuck overseas. Obviously, they'll have to go through proper immigration process. And if they qualify,
And
then they should
quarantine and
be
all the rest.
entering
Yes.
and enter here. So you remember Shane Jones made comments that were against arranged marriages that we have
Yes.
in India, and which I called hate speech, and was quite vocal. I wrote to the Prime Minister as well against that. So I don't tolerate that kind of nonsense that sometimes comes from people, those who don't understand the culture, those who don't understand, how
Mm-hmm.
or why still people, go back and get married in their own countries. They should be able to do that, and they should be able to bring their husband or wife here. So
Sure.
that's second. And then the third layer is of people, those who are on temporary visas and are here. So
Mm-hmm.
if they have become unemployed, at the moment their visas have been extended, as you would have seen just day before yesterday, visas have been extended for some
Mm-hmm.
more time, 5 months
Mm-hmm.
and 2 months, depending on what their condition
Yep.
is. And then the fourth group is people, those who are on temporary work visas or have been
Mm-hmm.
here in New Zealand on temporary
Mm-hmm.
work visas, but
Mm-hmm.
went overseas to India, Pakistan, or Bangladesh, whichever country they came from, and now are stuck there because of
Yes.
COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the fourth group. So when I'm dealing with these issues, it's not just one kind of issues that I get in my office. It's this mix of range of issues from immigrant
Yes.
community I get. So it's quite busy, especially since the start of
Yes.
COVID-19. It's dealing with a
I
very
guess I
unique
guess
and
what I'm
different kind
curious
of
about it, what
issue.
I'm curious about it in the perspective that we are discussing, and thank you very much for going into the detail for all the categories. But with the migrant workers themselves, what I was interested in was, would National have taken a more kind of approach to this, in terms of saying no, they can stay on, they can find whatever jobs they can't travel, we'll help them.
So Ajay, the first thing is availability of jobs. As I said,
There's plenty of jobs
215,000
out there
people.
that Kiwis are not
That's
filling
not.
at the moment, even in the horticultural sector. There are employers coming out and saying we can't find people, even though
So
there is
these
people
people.
on the dole.
So Ajay, these people, they have valid work visa here in New Zealand, and if their
Hmm.
visa has been extended, and if they
Yes.
are on a valid work visa here in New Zealand, they
Hmm.
can go and apply for those jobs. Nothing is stopping them.
Right. So you're saying take the jobs if you can, but leave in 5 months. That's okay with us.
So then they will have to see if their employer or whoever their employer is, they
It can
really
support
want
them.
them. And then they will have to go through the process. So people will have to go through proper
Hmm.
immigration process. But at the moment, if
Hmm.
they have a valid work visa here, they should take up the opportunity if
Yes.
it becomes available.
Right. So, um, probably moving on from that, that's a very interesting take on it. Thank you very much for sharing. Um, what do you feel with three representatives from the Indian community now in Parliament? How hard do you feel it is to be making a difference? One, as an MP, two, for your community, who you kind of represent, but you also represent the larger community, right? You represent Kiwis. So, how hard is it to make a difference for Indians in particular, for instance? And what could be done? What could be doing more?
So, Ajay, the first thing that I would say is that Indian community is part of that wider Kiwi community. So,
Sure.
some of our
But we
issues
also
are.
disadvantaged in many spheres of life. We are that's not hidden. It's the overrepresentation in so many indices in society. We're saying if we get representation, we're lucky to have you and Mr. Bakshi and Priyanka Radhakrishnan in there. But we don't see a lot of activity that says, oh, it's going to positively impact the community. So we are saying, is it really hard? Is it difficult when you're part of the larger uh, two-party network and the two major party network?
So, Ajay, personally for me, I've been quite vocal when it comes to anything to do with the community. As I said,
Mm-hmm.
when
Mm-hmm.
Shane Jones made those comments, you would have seen was on Sunday Star
Mm-hmm.
Times front page,
Yes.
calling it a hate speech. So these kind of things, when they come up, I definitely stand up. And I also
Mm-hmm.
took a slot in the general debate, which happens every Wednesday, and I spoke about that issue. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like fighting for the community at those levels definitely
Mm-hmm.
continues for me. But then it's
Okay.
also about ensuring that our
Mm-hmm.
community is not being stereotyped. Our
Mm-hmm.
community, because the biggest issue that we have is when people are new in New Zealand, they
Mm-hmm.
want to get a job. We know this, the employers, they always want to get somebody who has a local experience. And
Yes.
that was the reason why we introduced 90-day probation period, which we will reintroduce for all
Mm-hmm.
businesses, because now the current Labour government got rid of for some businesses. They have kept it for part of the businesses, but not for
Mm-hmm.
all. So
Mm-hmm.
my approach has been that when people are new in New Zealand, they
Mm-hmm.
have, I mean, this is going to be their first job. How can they produce a local work experience? So give them the opportunity to be in employment. And then
Mm-hmm.
after 90 days, if it doesn't work, at least they can use that as their local work experience. So these policies are actually to help our migrant communities,
Right.
90-day probation period as well. But
Right.
other than that, then there are other things which are kind of biases. Some biases are learned biases, some
Mm-hmm.
biases are kind of unconscious biases that happen
Mm-hmm.
in the
Mm-hmm.
community. What
Mm-hmm.
I would say is that don't accept them, don't just live with them, speak out against them. That is what I have done all my life. I would say that, on daily basis, I do experience that. There are
Sure.
people campaigning, they come out and say to me, go back where you have come from. And these are from other parties, especially in the last campaign. Yeah, in my
Mm-hmm.
public meetings, some people
Mm-hmm.
will turn up and they'll just stand there and keep screaming, go back where you have come from. And I would, my
So
response
your question should be Papatoi, because that's where I came from.
so my
That was my
my
answer. Every
response
time
to
somebody said, "Oh my God, where are you from, AJ?" I said, "Mount Wellington, mate."
That's a good answer. So yeah, so my response to them is, this is my home. My boys are born here, and
Yes.
where are you asking me to go back to?
And plus, we
Just
are all
because I'm
migrants. I
proud.
mean, we all
Yeah,
moved here. Some 150 years ago, some 80 years ago, some 20 years ago,
exactly.
some 5 years ago.
Exactly.
We all came from somewhere.
We all came from somewhere, but this, you can imagine, when our forefathers came here to New Zealand, how hard it
It would
must
have been
have been.
very hard. Yes, it
So
was.
they worked hard, and it's because of their hard work we are able to do what we are doing today. So we need to continue
No,
to
I think it's a
work
big
hard to
achievement to have three
ensure.
people. To have three people out of what? How many seats in Parliament now? Is it 100 plus?
120.
120? No, that keeps going up. There's too many, too many.
Oh, no,
Um,
no, no. What do you mean by keep going up? We have had
too many
we have
politicians.
had
There's too much
overhang.
bureaucracy.
We have had overhang couple of times, but other
Yes,
than that, yep, it's 120 since the start of MMP system.
yes. So again, you know I'm joking about it.
Oh,
Um, uh,
thanks,
there's
Ajay,
all
for clarifying.
this when it's politicians, anything over 50 is probably too much. But then we won't talk about other parts of the world. But thank you
Come on.
very much for joining us. I really am glad that you came along today. It's been very interesting to get your perspective. Um, and also to, I think, through you, get the perspective of what the National Party's line is at the moment heading into the elections. It's been entertaining and it's been quite enlightening. Thank you very much for joining us today. And we
Thank
wish
you.
you all the best.
Thank you, Ajay.
Hopefully, you will get that party vote one more time. But I think
Party vote
it's
and the candidate vote as well.
and that
Candidate vote.
candidate vote
It's
as well.
time. It's time, Ajay. Apni Indian community is listening. It's time that
Hanji.
they start voting for their own candidate too. Why not?
I'm not going to argue with you for or against. I'm going to be diplomatic, just like most politicians are.
I understand, Ajay. But thank you so much for the opportunity, and I really enjoyed having this conversation with you.
No, next time I'll be asking you slightly tougher questions now.
Yep, I'll be ready.
Yeah, you're very adept at it. Thank you very much, Dr. Parmjeet Parmar. Well, for coming on to the Weekender on Sunday and enjoy what's left of your Sunday. Have a great day.
Happy Father's Day as well. Bye bye.
Happy Father's Day as well. Happy Teachers' Day also. You came from that
Oh,
background.
oh, thank you.
Slightly belated, 3 days later. One day
All
later?
good. Bye bye.
One day
Thank you.
later. Okay. Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Right. So that was Dr. Parmjeet Parmar. She's very certain of her, I think, of her convictions and of her beliefs. And I think being in the position that she is in as a representative from the Indian community as well as from Mount Roskill in the New Zealand Parliament, I think that's a good place to come from. I've known her in the past through my experience in working in broadcasting, and it's really good to see the journey she has come on and how she has grown. So thank you very much once more. And without further ado, let's go live to Sandeep Singh, editor of the Indian Weekender, to have a chin wag, chew the cud, and to get a wider perspective on that interview with the list MP Parmjeet Parmar. Well, among other things, we tend to talk about lots of things. Sandeep ji, how are you doing?
I'm very good. Thanks, Sajay. Thanks for hosting such a wonderful conversation. I enjoyed every bit of it. I hope I can see that you also enjoyed that. Your discussion was quite relaxed, touching on a
It's
number of
okay
issues,
occasionally if I
especially.
can, if they see they pull out legs without saying it, right? Because they never answer the question straightforward one way, right? Most politicians, not saying about Paramjit. So occasionally, if we can get a laugh with them or at them, it's not a bad idea.
Of course, not at all. So you have all your way. You can do whatever you want, and surely happy to see that, and I enjoyed every bit of it.
So anything new come out of that, or it was kind of what we were expecting?
Oh, well, of course, we can't expect politicians, especially our list MP, to come out and give any path-breaking perspective on their political parties. That is a
Mm-hmm,
bigger
mm-hmm,
debate that we
mm-hmm.
feel that list MPs are expected to toe parties' line, which
Yes,
they have done well. But yeah, to give credit to Dr. Parmjit Parmar, I think she came quite well prepared about a range of issues. And one of the tough areas where Dr. Parmjeet has been that she holds a portfolio of research. She is research and science technology
yes.
spokesperson for National Party.
Mm-hmm.
So being a list MP in the parliament for on the basis of your ethnicity and holding a portfolio which probably a lot of our ethnic communities might not be able to relate directly.
Yes,
Um, so basically, it's a tough job, and I can probably we can feel for that. So if we
yes,
see that in last 6 years he has been in the parliament, probably there has been a lot of unsatisfaction within our community members,
mm-hmm.
equally for all list MPs from time to time. So, in case of Dr. Parmar, today we were able to understand that yeah, she's holding a portfolio which does not give her opportunity to plunge into issues that really matters to our Indian community.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
lately, what Dr. Parmar has started doing that, and that has been noticed as well, that she has picked up those issues which has been plaguing our community member, including
Hmm.
the issues of partners who have been stranded outside,
Yes.
partners of our Kiwi residents and citizens. And yeah, she had made some noise over there that was noted as well.
Yes.
So I think, yeah, it was a good conversation you had, and we were able to listen all facets of what she has been doing in the parliament.
Right. So I found it very interesting that they are pretty much in line with what has happened with the COVID-19, and there isn't a lot of new ideas, whether it's from the party high command or whether it's from people, like the list MPs. The, I think COVID is so perplexing for governments around the world because there is no cure, there is no vaccine, and apart from doing those social distancing and hygiene practices, there isn't much available to us. And contact tracing and making sure we don't pass it on and all that. It seems that there is not really anything new coming from national leader in terms of saying, no, we have a better idea, we know how to combat this. I'm not holding them up in the light and saying they don't know what the hell they're doing. I think it's a really difficult thing to get your head around. And so there was nothing new from them.
Surely. No, definitely it has been the case. National has some tough time in last few months ever since COVID had hit upon us.
Yeah,
As we know that National was polling at high 40s, probably
yeah,
around February early this year. But
yeah.
as soon as we were hit upon by COVID, we went into lockdown, and then probably we have seen the whitewash. From high
Mm-hmm,
40s, it has gone to maybe mid 20s or high 20s. So that has been
mm-hmm,
a catastrophic. They have lost two leaders over there. And it was a phase of National Party where they were not sure of what kind of COVID response they should come out.
mm-hmm.
And surprisingly, now probably National is in best phase in last 4 or 5 months, as we have seen the rise of their number five, Dr. Shane Reddy, who is the health spokesperson and who has brought in a lot calmer and serene approach towards COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
Towards response to COVID-19, which has been actually received quite warmly by a lot of people out there in media and analysts and in general people as well, who might not
Yep.
be happy with National's overly aggressive attitude, but their number five, Dr. Shane Reddy, he has
Mm-hmm.
brought in a lot of scientific input as well, and he's talking about science. He's willing to give concessions to government where it is needed, where government is seen following strict scientific advice. So
Yes.
that has actually helped National, which probably in the last few months they have lost that support.
Yes.
So certainly we are seeing change over there in National's fortune as well. But will that be enough? Come 17th October, that is something that still remains to be seen, and we need to keep an eye on that.
Yes, very much so. 5 weeks to go, and I think there must be another poll due out in the next week or so, if not sooner. That might give us a little bit more of an insight into where the fortunes lie for all the parties at the moment. I think it would be great to get another one of those Colmar Brunton ones, or the ones that come out at News Hub. It'll be interesting to see what is the what is in the political fortunes of the country. But do you
Surely,
feel
well, yep.
sorry, do you feel there will be a change now? I think there's been a bit more of a stabilizing hand at the helm since Crusher Collins got in, if you like. And she's not that Crusher Collins anymore. There's a softer version of her on the media, kissing babies and everything. Do you think she's a firmer hand at the till, and she's able to actually guide the party through what was really quite a difficult period now?
Well, that is a very interesting question and a difficult one to answer. And we don't want to get ahead of ourselves and give any messianic statement that what's going to come out of
I predict.
that voters, the polls that no one knows. But
Yes,
what we can tell confidently, like many other media commentators,
yes,
that Judith Collin is doing a reasonably okay job, I would say. She, on one hand, she is maintaining her image of being Crusher Collins. She is equally tough on the government, asking
yes,
on the hard questions, tough questions sometimes.
yes.
being overtly aggressive,
Mm-hmm.
where especially in the government's response to COVID and the second wave of coronavirus in the country,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm not sure, apart from helping the core supporters of National Party, would have
Yes.
enticed a lot of voters who are standing there in the wide center.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, one thing I can tell you for sure, after emergence of Judith Collins and after re-emergence of this second wave of COVID-19, two
Mm-hmm.
things have definitely happened. A, national core supporter who were on the right, center right,
Mm-hmm.
voters, they have definitely energized by the prospect of Judith Collins voters. That's the kind of leadership they want to see
Yes.
of the party and of the nation, right?
Yes.
But the other thing is that there has been a huge voter base out there in the center who may not be staunch supporter of national or labor, and
Mm-hmm.
every election they carry their vote from one party to another party.
Right.
So they have consolidated a lot uh, towards Jacinda Ardern in the
Mm-hmm.
last 4 or 5 months, when
Yes.
Jacinda Ardern's led coalition government has handled the COVID-19 crisis in New Zealand quite reasonably well. So that was
Yes.
the case. That we can say confidently, like every successive polls, we can see that those voters have rewarded
Mm-hmm.
Liver and Jacinda Ardern quite nicely. But that was still the time when second wave of coronavirus has
Yes.
emerged. So we
Yes.
need to see where that voter base is standing. What I can
And
say confidently that right now that voter base is definitely confused and
yes.
blurred. So they are being bombarded by information or say press releases and the approach of National Party who are adamant to say that the second wave of coronavirus was a result of leakage at the border,
Right.
result of poor leadership and poor
Mm-hmm.
management,
Mm-hmm.
which has been time and again refuted by those in the government, but more importantly, those who are managing that public health crisis. I'm talking
Sure.
about Ashley Blumfield and other scientists who are just trying to see that probably a leakage at the border is unavoidable
Mm-hmm.
and the virus is very tricky. So my perception is that a huge number of voterways who are there out, who are at the center, they are confused at the moment. And right now, what they are doing, they are holding their votes and their choices very tight, and they are keeping an eye. They're
So
keeping an
that
eye on
support,
how.
in a way, you're saying that support is there for Labour to lose because they had taken on at the initial outset because of their response. They had taken on that early lead, but they could
Well,
squander it as
what
well,
I'm
depending
trying to
on what
say,
happens.
sure, no, what I'm trying to say is, AJ, that we have seen a consolidation of support for Prime Minister Ardern and Labour Party in last 4 or 5 months,
Mm-hmm.
eh, which kept on going better even when National was struggling to get their leaders right.
Mm-hmm.
And so what now has happened after the emergence of second wave and after the way Judith is trying to come out, and she, if you note her style of politics right now, she is coming out with a mix of strategies. On one
Mm-hmm.
hand, she is maintaining her attack and holding
Mm-hmm.
the government to account,
Yes.
but on the other hand, she's coming out appearing to be very soft and trying to ask genuine questions. And another
Yes.
thing that I have noticed in National Party, which
Mm-hmm.
probably we will be our line of inquiry for next 4 to 5 months, that we are seeing them taking a very smart move towards social issues. We see
Mm-hmm.
that they are talking about the new children's policy, a new helping the mothers after immediately after the birth. So those
Yes.
kind of issues there, which were previously very close to Labour Party, now they
Mm-hmm.
are picking up those issues and they
Yes.
are trying to stir the nest.
Yes.
So that's a very interesting take. I will definitely say that Judith Collins has brought some innovative approach in the National Party leadership. But
Mm-hmm.
again, the thing is that how smart is our voter and how they are going to understand or react to these changes in the National Party is something that we'll see in next 4 or 5 weeks.
So something to be picked up as we go forward. And thank you very much for joining us and for that very interesting and very in-depth take on the fortunes of the parties and the electoral component within that. It's going to be a very interesting time heading into October. Thank you very much once again, Sandeep Singh ji, and we look forward to being able to kato and chato all this next week.
Sure, certainly. Thank you very much. You have a wonderful rest of your show.
Yes, and have a great Sunday, what's left of it. The sun is still out, I can see from the window here, so you might catch a few more rays.
Definitely, I will. Thank you.
Thank you again. So, one of the pieces that we were going to talk about at the outset of the program, and we have gone into a little bit of an overtime situation here, was that New Zealand was the second safest country. According to a deep study done overseas, who rated 250 countries in terms of their COVID response and how safe they were, New Zealand was number two. Number one was Germany. Just so you know, we said we would tell you. And number seven, 6 and 7 were Australia and China, and with several other countries in between, and of course, all the way to 250. This is going to keep fluctuating because the virus, as we all know, seems to have its own mind and it carries on. In our news from Fiji, there is a very interesting name, a gentleman by the name of Professor Pal Ahluwalia. He has been appointed the new Vice Chancellor and President of the University of South Pacific, USP. Now, Mr. Ahluwalia was suspended by the university's executive committee in June for alleged malpractice and misconduct. But he was reinstated after what turned out to be weeks and weeks of protests by students and staff from the university. And that happened when the university's council ruled that due process had not been followed. His supporters said he was punished for exposing corruption. And other countries accused Fiji for trying to take over and mount a takeover for the famous University of South Pacific. On Friday, a special emergency meeting of the Executive Council cleared Professor Ahluwalia of all allegations. Quite a turnaround. Pal Ahluwalia went on to say he was deeply humbled by the love, friendship, and support that had been bestowed upon him and his wife, and that they were committed to serving the Pacific and making USP even stronger. He thanked the students, staff, alumni, and the wider communities whose belief and support, he said, gave him the additional strength to continue to the work to shaping better Pacific futures. Now, his supporters, who claim his original suspension was political after he complained of extensive corruption, were naturally very elated. While thanking them, he called them the pillars of support on which he now stood. The secretary of the USP Staff Union, Lima Faniasi, commended his reinstatement, but lamented that many of the problems Pal Ahluwalia had exposed had remained. They're still there. The majority of the university population who got in behind it seek good governance. So, the challenge before the USP, the University Council, has to be to turn the breaching of this giant rift that it's opened up at the USP. Can they turn it? The Council has also implemented the recommendations of a report by the audit firm BDO, which detail the abuse of the office and mismanagement allegations involving the university's former Vice Chancellor and the leadership group. Vanuatu's Director General of Education, Pat Mosiati, who has seen the reports, says the Council wants an independent review of the findings, and university academic Morgan Tui Maileli observed that the troubles on campus have been around for too long, and he's happy something's finally being done to fix the problems. The history professor wants the BDO report to be released in full by the university. But there was just nobody who was courageous and powerful enough to be in a position to expose the mismanagement, was their take on it. The incoming chancellor of the USP, now President Lionel Angimio, was instrumental in Professor Ahluwalia's reinstatement. When the exposure of these allegations came, several people knew about it. The Vice Chancellor of the University of the South Pacific, Pal Ahluwalia, who is also a Kenyan NRI, says he's elated by news that all allegations against him have been cleared. Well, congratulations, Pal Ahluwalia, on your reinstatement and for being a beacon of change in the South Pacific. And thank you very much for staying with us till the end of the show. I think we will, I'll just consult with my producer if we have time for that one last story, or are we going to wrap things up? Wrap things up, one last story. Okay, so one small story coming out of the sporting world. The North versus South match, sometimes known as the Inter-Island match, was a long-standing rugby union fixture in New Zealand between the North Island and the South Island teams. The first match was played on the 30th of June 1897 at Wellington's Athletic Park, and the match became an annual fixture from 1902. So that's almost 118 years. In the 2020 edition, young Crusaders outside back Will Jordan scored a try in the 85th minute of the match to snatch the win for Te Waiponamu. And after Te Aika Amaui had looked on course for victory, the game featured 7 lead changes, with the North coming back from a 31-21 down in the second half to hold a 35-30 advantage until the final moments. And then it was gone. Congratulations, Te Waiponamu. Now, I would feel it would be a little bit remiss if we didn't tell you that earlier news that I was going to share with you about Harbhajan Singh, that he was not going to be playing for the Chennai Super Kings this particular edition of IPL 2020. To keep a long story rather short, basically, he's taken time off to be with his wife and his young child. And he felt that he couldn't really continue to serve the team and his duties while he was worrying about what might be happening to his family back home. Suresh Raina has also bowed out in the current IPL that is going to be held in UAE from September 19. We'll keep you posted on more things that come out of there. Last but not least, in our little WhatsApp corner, time for just a short one today. Last week, or just a couple of days ago, in fact, on the occasion of Teachers' Day, I contacted my school teachers to thank them and to tell them that whatever I am today is all because of you, sir, madam. And they said, down to the last teacher, don't blame us, we tried our best. Typical. Most of my teachers were quite the forthright people. आप सब भी अपना ख्याल रखें, जहां भी हैं, safe रहें, स्वस्थ रहें. I'm your host Ajay Vasisht with The Weekender on Sunday. I will see you again next Sunday in, for now, at least the second most safe country in the world. But हमारे लिए, because we are living here, in Aotearoa, अभी भी the safest country दुनिया भर में. Kia ora, salam, namaste, sat sri akal. Till next time, do follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. I'll see you again, same time next week on Weekender on Sunday.